Recently, I painted up this orc knob. I have a massive orc collection that is inspired by the movie Mad Max Fury Road, but I always held off on doing the white sunscreen skin. But recently I painted up this knob with the sunscreen on, and it's terribly intriguing. For the last few weeks, I found myself as I walk past my orc shelf picking up this guy and really looking at him. There is something spicy about this that the rest of my orc army is not doing. That's kind of the nature of army painting. You want an army, you want to play with it, you paint them up to make them look great. But then a few years go by. I guess Mad Max came out in 2015. It's been 11 years since Mad Max came out. And in that time I have collected a massive orc army of green-skinned orcs. But this guy has got me all discombobulated. And I want to see where the rabbit hole goes. I want to paint up a whole squad using my new tricks and tips. And I want to see what this could look like if I did go and bite the bullet and repaint my entire orc horde. Some Storm Boys are a unit I definitely need in my collection. Some super fast orcs that can pack a punch in close combat, especially during the WoG turn. This kit is a little old, so old the instructions don't even have numbers, you just have to look at the instructions and match the parts. Really though, there's no going wrong with this kit, and I discovered any of the bodies will fit on any of the torsos, so every part is interchangeable. The jetpacks are particularly fun. Each of these has its own ramshackle design of rocket engine or missiles haphazardly strapped together. I used my rotary tool to drill out the engine exhaust, and I used my reamer bit to open these up a little wider. That's all the jump packs, or at least the orky version of a jump pack taken care of. Now for the orcs themselves. I glued the two halves of my orc bodies together, and these are a little larger than the old 1999 orc boys, and they'd probably fit nicely alongside the new Armageddon orcs. And they all wear bomber jackets because they're members of the Cult of Speed, those orcs who are obsessed with going fast. The only flaw on these are the bad gaps in the shoulder pads. I used some Tamiya basic putty to fill these in and sand them away. At least they're in a nice easy spot to reach. My Storm Boys are ready for their weapons, and there are some good slug gun choppas in the Storm Boys kit, but I don't want to use the stick bomb arms. My Mad Max army uses pole grenades like the War Boys have in the movie, so instead I replaced these arms with something found in the old Orc Boy sprue. I decided to have some fun and I stole a Shuda arm. Regular Orc Boys now come with a Shuda in addition to their slug gun choppa. Previously this was an upgrade, but now it's baked in, so it's reasonable that any orc could be outfitted with either. To make this ancient bit look a little better, I carved off the barrel and replaced it with a length of plastic tubing that I plastic glued into place. Then I put a sight bit over the front post. I love this orky bit for guns, even though it always seems like they're firing from the hip. I'm sure the idea of a weapon sight though makes the gun somehow shoot more accurately. Now to attach the weapons, I mixed up a little green stuff and I shoved this into their armpits so I can pose the arms exactly how I wanted, making them a little bit more dynamic than the original kit. On a few of these arms, the green stuff ended up spilling out and I tried to smooth these away with my sculpting tools, either incorporating them into the skin or making them look like the undershirts. This was tricky, but I feel like it won't matter in the final product. Orcs are allowed to be a little messy. Now for the heads, and the Stormboy kit comes with some great heads, but they all have helmets or hats. I really want to test out some orc skin recipes with this unit, so I went hunting for bear heads. This was surprisingly difficult. I don't know if I just have used up most of the good bear heads, or if orcs really mostly wear helmets, but I only managed to find 5 I liked. Now the kit is nearly done, but I want to add a little Mad Max flair. I grabbed some grenades from our Ramshackle Bits pack, available at EonsOfBattle.com. These bits have some holes that accept 1mm brass rods so they can be turned into the pole grenades. I cut myself some lengths of brass rod and then stuck them into my bombs. Then I took some 2mm plastic rod and I drilled a hole so I can make the end caps of the back of each shaft. Then for the hand wrap, I took some peel and stick name tags and I cut these into little strips. The sticker part is great so I can wrap them around the handle with just a twirl. It gives a great texture, and then I dripped a little super glue on the ends to make sure they never unravel. I made up a bunch of these and then stuck them onto my jump packs. Stormboys do have the grenades keyword, and they're a great choice to use it on. With their 12 inches of movement, it's easy for them to get within 8 inches to throw those bombs. The Stormboy kit is pretty good. It needed a little bit of green stuff work to get the arms posed exactly how I wanted, and it's surprisingly hard to find helmetless orc heads. I don't know if that's always what I want to do going forward, but I at least definitely want it for these 5 where I'm really going to be playing around on the skin. And orcs, they don't show that much skin, and so I really wanted something with a little bit of extra face. Back in the day when I was first collecting my orc army, I did have 5 Stormboys. I don't know what happened to them. I think they've been lost to time. Parts of them are in a drawer somewhere. I think I used them for scrap at one point, but I would like to get some more Stormboys. One thing I am holding off on though is the knob. This squad is meant to have a knob with a power claw in it. There isn't one provided in the box, and I kind of want to wait a couple of months for the 11th edition Orc Codex to come out to see exactly how it shakes up, because that would be a great opportunity to kit bash something really, really cool. Big ol' orc with a big ol' rocket back. Or I could see Games Workshop axing it because the parts don't come in the box. I could see it going either way, so I'm gonna hold off for now. But these guys are ready to rock and roll on some bases, and I got some ideas for those bases. Inside this box, I found the old 25mm bases. It's been a hot minute since Orc Boys stood on 25s, so I grabbed some Cobalt Keep 32mm magnet bases. Then for my Mad Max Wasteland, I stuck down some 1/4 inch cork. Also, this cork is available from EonsOfBattle.com. I covered some of the bases 100%, and then others I left a little bit of base showing. Then I used this grinding wheel to quickly blast down the cork into some pitcher's mounds. I started gluing down my orcs. Some of them have some really attractive rubble that they're perched on top of, and for others, I dipped back into the Ramshackle Bits pack and I found some automotive gubbins to sprinkle onto these bases. After gluing down a little pile, I drilled a 1mm hole into the resin and I stuck in some brass rod. Then I attached my orcs, and once I had them all in the air, I could perfect the bases. I mixed up some milliput and I smushed this around where the bits met the cork. These piles will help sell the look of the wasteland overtaking these ruined chunks. Once I was happy with my ground layer, I skinned it with a layer of sandy texture paste. With the bases all done, it was finally time to hit my minis with a white prime and get them ready for painting. I think one squad of Storm Boys is going to be an auto-include in any orc army. They're just so good and so cheap. They automatically score secondary mission cards. And in the Take It All 1 DP detachment, there's a stratagem so that you can just pick them right off the board and put them back in strategic reserve at the end of your opponent's movement phase. So you could just leave them in strategic reserve at the beginning of the game, and then as soon as you draw a secondary mission card that just says B somewhere on the battlefield, you drop them down, and then hopefully, if they survive, you just pick them right back up and put them back in strategic reserve, waiting for another chance to just get a card off. Now, orcs do have some access to some other units that can do a very similar thing. Boss Snickrot is an interesting choice with stealth and lone operative, and he might even have infiltrate, but I don't remember. He's a little tiny bit more expensive than this squad, but maybe a touch more survivable with his 5-up invulnerable save. A slightly more interesting worse choice would be the Shock Jump Dragsta. It has an ability where if it advances, you can just pick it up and put it anywhere on the battlefield more than 9 inches away from enemies. Now, it does have to make an advance move, so it can't do action secondaries, which is a little tricky, but the fact that it's a vehicle, it's toughness 7 with 9 wounds, it can't just be wiped off the board from anything. This squad of 5 Storm Boys, a Guardsman squad will just kill them, a Space Marine Intercessor squad will just kill them, Warp Spiders will just wipe them away. They're very, very fragile, where the Shock Jump Dragsta has a little bit of survivability. I think for now in my army, I'm going to use these guys as my action units. And I might do the Shock Jump Dragsta because I really like the model and I feel like it would be good. Having these guys in my army is going to mean that my Orc Warbikers are free to do what they want, which is a little bit of shooting, a little bit of stabbing. I just got to get these guys painted up. Step 1 of my Mad Max Orcs is hitting all the clothing with some Grim Black. I used to paint just the pants black, and then whatever shirt they were wearing would be white, and that would sorta kinda represent the white powdery sunscreen of the War Boys, but it never really read as well as I wanted it to. Instead, I'm just going with Grim Black for all the soft cloth, bracelets, and pouches on these fellas. The fun focal point will be the skin and the weapon, so I'm not too worried about making the clothing look perfect. While I was at it, I pulled off the jetpacks. I never glued these on because I figured it'd be easier to paint them off the minis anyway. And speaking of painting, for the metal, I mixed Noble Skin and Dark Wood together. I'm using Noble Skin for the majority of the metal, and just 1 drop of Dark Wood adds some warmth to this mix so that it stands out from the Grim Black, even though these colors are very similar in hue. I put this on all the metal bits as step 1 for some really rusty equipment. This looks great on the bodies, but the jetpacks feel a little too even and bright, so I sprayed on some more Noble Skin on the bottom with my airbrush. Then I hit everything with a satin varnish in preparation for some dirty down rust. I mixed a few drops of this stuff with water, thinking about 50-50, and then randomly splashing this over the metal, getting it about 75% on each part. I put this on especially thick in the recesses and around rivets. And as long as I'm experimenting with my scheme on these orcs, I decided to throw some dirty down yellow rust onto a few guys, just to see how it looks. Once it was dry, the rust was incredibly rusty. A little too rusty, but I planned for this. The satin varnish wasn't to protect the speed paint from the dirty down, it was to protect it from water. I took a wet paintbrush and I dragged this over the dirty down. This rehydrates it and pulls it off the raised surfaces. I wipe the excess paint onto a paper towel so the rust is left behind only in the recesses. This perfecting step is really satisfying, and the added water also helps the dirty down rust to really bloom, giving off some more dramatic color. Comparing this to my knob, I think I went too hard with the silver dry brushing and sponging. It kinda outshines all the wonderful detail of the rust, so this time I want to try something a little more subtle. First, I tried some Great Hall's Gray as a dry brush edge highlight. This made the edges of weapons and armor more visible without pulling focus away from the rust. Then I tried a dry brushing with some darker gunmetal, Surcoat Silver. I think this worked really well. This color is very similar in hue to the speed paint on there, but where the edges catch the light, it gives a nice glitter that really sells the metal. I think this metallic is the clear winner over the Great Hall's Grey. I put this on everyone, and then I did a sponging of mithril blade with a very light touch, just on the very edge of the weapons and armor to add a little brightness. I think this turned out much stronger than my previous knob, and now I got this recipe moving forward. These guys are really close now, just the tubes. These storm boys have tubes running over their chests and legs to their jetpacks. I guess these are fuel lines. I can't imagine they can carry much, but I suppose if an orc thinks they have plenty of gas, then they will. I used some demigod flames to base coat these, and then I gave each one a highlighted demonic yellow, and my orcs are ready to be turned into war boys. That is some orky metal. You're gonna have to remember this recipe when it's time to paint some Necromunda. Now, the only thing left is the skin, and that is gonna be the trickiest part. When I painted up this war boss, the white sunscreen skin, it's so interesting. I did paint this guy in pale green, and then I put on the white paint. And I think it does read and it looks Mad Maxy, but I have so many experiments I want to run to see if I can make it any better. For my first try, I want to do my usual orc skin. Familiar pink and then ghillie dew, and then throw the white on top and see how that looks. I gave the skin a wash with the thinned down pink, and then where this settles in the recesses, the green over top darkens to make it into a fleshy brown. Then for that white paint, I took some ash gray and matte white. I started out with the ash gray, and this turned out to be very similar to the green, so it was tricky to see it go on. I tried to keep it on the raised areas and let the green complexion stick around in the recesses, but it was maybe a little too dark. Once he got gray, I switched to the white, and while I was putting this on, I was having trouble properly highlighting the skin, so I pretty much just recovered all of the gray with white paint. He looks very similar to my original knob, but with darker recesses. It's okay, but on to the next guy. I gave this fellow the same pink treatment, but this time I switched up the green, going for a darker algae green. Maybe a darker green will show up greener in the recesses. I applied my gray highlights, and over the darker color, it was much easier to see it go on, and I think I did a better job highlighting because of that. I think the white looks good, but it's still almost black in the recesses. Time for test number 3. This time I put Goddess Glow on his mouth and teeth. This redder color is less saturated than the pink, but I think the pink was actually looking too vibrant next to the white. Then I used my regular army green paint thinned down for the skin. I think the speed paint was flowing into the cracks too much and making my orky recesses too intense. This time when I applied the gray and white, the recesses were much lighter green. I think this was my best try yet, but the army green is really close to the gray, so I want to see it again but darker. On the next guy, I switched out the army green for Midnight Olive. This color is also desaturated, so hopefully it'll match the gray and white, just leaving behind a tinge of green in the recesses. And for this guy, because of that darker green, I left more of the gray showing, only putting white on the tops of his muscles and the details of his face. I think this is the best orc yet. For the last try, I decided to go with a wild card, Temple Gate Teal. This is a really vibrant blue-green, and maybe that vibrancy will show through on the final result. It's only one way to find out. After a glazing of this, I applied it to my gray, and holy cow is this color saturated. I had to go really hard on the glazing to cover this, and I even mixed it into the gray to create a shade color that wasn't so blue. It's definitely something, and I can see the green a lot more than on the others, but I'm still not sure. I decided to finish up the skin. I put black in the eye sockets. This is another detail from the movie Mad Max Fury Road, and I picked out their eyeballs with red. And you know what else has red eyeballs? That's right, our website. Over there, we're all restocked on our excellent hobby goodies: Gamer Grass Tufts, Great Height Studio Bits for your Space Marines, Army Painter paints, brushes, basing cork, ultra thin and ultra thick super glue, and we've got terrain. It's the best way to support us doing what we do by getting a membership. Each month, members get a credit good for any one terrain pack we've ever made or the brand new one. This July, we have created the Bocage Battlefield Terrain, a series of pieces perfect for putting together a historic landscape for games of Conflict 47, Bolt Action, or any war zone with a labyrinth of overgrown hedgerows. These pieces will funnel your infantry into tight firefights while hiding the mysterious shack. Maybe it's a utility building, or maybe it's an improvised encampment. Hiding some flesh-eating zombies kept on ice for the right moment to unleash a devastating outbreak. This set was designed by us and is available at EonsOfBattle.com. Over the fur lining of their jackets, I put some Great Hall's Grey speed paint. I've been looking at them all day as white primer, so I think they look pretty good, no big changes there. Then I touched up their teeth with a little bony spike, and I can finally attach the jump packs and see them all put together so I can compare. 5 orc skin tests later, I now have 5 essentially identical orcs. Yeah, there's not a lot of differences here. I can tell the blue guy, but other than that, they're all identical. I do like how they look, and they feel a little more Mad Maxy than my typical orcs who are just painted green. But they're kind of fine. I was painting them up in the hopes that I would learn something more than what I learned from my little knob here. But they're still a little weird. but maybe once the bases are done. I started out with some Demigod Flame. This color thinned down over the white primer looks like a super saturated yellow with some orange in the recesses. Then I made myself up a little soup of yellow pigment powder. I splashed this onto the bases where the ground met the bits. Once this is dry, it sticks to the parts and looks like dry, dusty sand clinging to the rubble. And that's pretty much exactly what it is, so it adds a nice realism. Then I dry brushed the surface of these bases with some space dust. A really warm yellow-white paint. I used this sparingly, so it just left behind some little pinpricks as an almost white color to really bring out the texture of the sand. Then the only thing left was to hit the rims of the bases with black, and the first step of my new orcs are done. The first squad in a new era of my Mad Max orcs. These guys turned out interesting. I kind of feel like I need to paint another squad before I can really know if I like the white sunscreeny skin. There's definitely something here, and I think these guys work pretty well. I don't know if the move is gonna be like some of them are green and then some of them have the white paint on them, or maybe it's just toning down the white paint and working in a little bit more green. It's really tricky, but I think these guys do look pretty slick. They're definitely recognizable as Mad Max themed orcs. And speaking of orcs, Games Workshop recently showed off some new orc warbikers, and as a connoisseur of orc warbikers, I own about 30. I'm very excited for the new kit, and that would be actually a good one to try out some other metals. These guys are very rusty, which feels very Mad Max, but I feel like the bikes should be different. They shouldn't be super incredibly rusty. I think maybe chromey? I've never really played around much with chrome paints, but that could be a fun experiment to run. Let me know in the comments below, what do you guys think of these orcs? Are they proper Mad Max warboys, or should I go back to the classic greenskins to give them a more 40k look? I can still go either way. I like how these guys turned out, but I miss green orcs a little bit. Although I have had like 10 years of painting orcs green, so maybe it is a little bit more fun to try something new. I don't know, my army is always changing and growing and expanding. So I'm just gonna do whatever I want. Thanks for watching.